This is the March 22nd, 2022 Board of Waterworks Trustees meeting. We have on our agenda today, our consent agenda today, minutes from the February 22nd, 2022 Board of Waterworks Trustees meeting, minutes for the March 1st, 2022 Planning Committee meeting, minutes for the March 8th, 2022 Finance and Audit Committee meeting, financial statements, a list of payments for February 2022, a summary of CEO approved expenditures in excess of $20,000, and establishing our next meeting date as April 26, 2022. Is there a motion to move the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Ted, do you have anything to add?
I would just add that included in the minutes, or with the minutes for the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, are the slides from Amy's presentation, which was excellent on rates and trends and affordability. Direct the board's attention to that.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions on the consent agenda? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 And those opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda passed. The board requested, this is our period of public comment, and we will welcome public comment from anyone that would like to speak to the board this time. It also is a time for us to focus a little bit on regional governance. Before we talk about regional governance, is there anyone here who wishes to speak to the board on regional governance or any other matter? I don't see anyone in the room. Do you see anyone online, Michelle? All right. I thought, Ted, maybe what we would do since we had this period is maybe we could talk, if you had an update on regional governance, you could give it at the beginning of our board meetings from now on, and that way we'd have a place for it.
Certainly. One thing I would like to share today related to regional governance is that last night at their council meetings, both Altoona and Johnston passed the founding resolution. And so we are moving right along there in terms of our wholesale customers having passed the resolution. Amy and I also had the opportunity last night to visit Bondurant and share a presentation with their board. We have a meeting scheduled or a presentation scheduled with the Polk City Council on Monday of next week, the 28th. And beyond Polk City and Bondurant, I think Warren Water is the one other community or agency that has yet to pass the founding resolution. So we're nearly through the entire list of our wholesale customers. So that's very positive. The 2080 agreement has been shared after the February board meeting. We shared that with all of our wholesale customers. I know that they are all diligently reviewing the 2080 agreement. We've gotten some very general comments back, but our plan is to reach out to each community after the end of the first quarter, which is quickly approaching, and coordinate a time where we can visit with them, answer their specific questions, give them specific feedback. So, as you know, Graham, we've scheduled some other public engagements. You and I attended one this morning, a breakfast club meeting. We've got Rotary scheduled, a lot of interest, and we're doing a lot of public engagement right now. And, primarily, I would say almost entirely positive feedback from the public thus far.
correct. I mean, Ted's gonna speak to the Downtown Rotary Club on Thursday. I think there'll be another opportunity to speak to the Friday AM Rotary Club in the near future. I was invited and I'm gonna speak to ICCI tomorrow evening via Zoom. I welcome that invitation. I look forward to that. And so and Ted and staff is working very hard to schedule any type of opportunity like that. So if you know of any group that Des Moines Waterworks and others, whether it's West Des Moines or Riverdale should attend, we are open to that.
And I am aware that West Des Moines has been doing some presentations as well, primarily in West Des Moines.
Is that on our Facebook page? For instance, if a neighborhood association would want to reach out and have a presentation so that they would have a link that they could connect to, or
It's a good
what are we
idea.
doing on social media?
I don't know if that specifically is on Facebook, Jen, do you know?
And I don't know if it's not ongoing, we have had social media posts about engaging with the process and where we've sent them. You actually posted it, what have we had so far?
We had a couple different posts talking about different components of CIWW with some graphics that we had a consultant design. On the website, there is information about if someone would like to know more information, perhaps if they would want a presentation, they could reach out that way as well. But we're happy to add some more things.
Yeah, one of the beauties of the social media platforms is we can pretty quickly put a message out there, and that may be something we want to do is just, hey, if you're a group organization, you'd like to hear more, let us know.
Good.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy.
We heavily promoted the open houses.
We did promote the open houses recently, and we did say, you know, if you have questions, this is how you get more information.
One of the things too that Ted is working on that we talked about, we should mention here, is that he's working very hard to make sure that the timeline is continually put out in front for everyone, not the public, but the specific communities, so that we stay on top of this. If we want communities to really begin signing this on September 1, thereabouts, there's a lot of work that has to be done. And so Ted's continually putting a schedule out there, reminding people this is the comment period, this is when we expect comments, this is when we expect to respond, and such as we all know, if we don't do that, this is something that could bog down very quickly. So I think that's good.
This is Diane, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm in Florida. On the timeline, did we get input on that? I don't remember us adopting a specific timeline. I remember the comments for, getting comments in, not comments, but having the communities pass their, resolutions by a certain date, but I don't remember the rest of the timeline.
You know, Diane, we've talked broadly about the timeline in terms of asking communities to consider the founding resolution in the first quarter. Second and third quarter would be when we worked jointly on the 2080 agreement, which we issued after the February meeting. We would do our public engagement primarily during the second and third quarter, and then in the fourth quarter, we would be signing the agreement. Now, we've been putting out some more specific requests to the communities, indicating we'd like to meet with them in April, we'd like to get some initial comments by the 1st of May, and that we're hoping to have a document, a 2080 document ready by the 1st of September. We haven't gotten any feedback, or we didn't talk a lot about that. We just kind of put out some dates that we would like for people to consider. Kind of just trying to make this a stepwise process so that there are touch points regularly throughout the year. People have an understanding of what we're trying to do, but I wouldn't say that we've gotten feedback on that timeline. It's just the timeline.
No, I'm just trying to understand, since they are all engaging, you know, council to review, how long do they think that's gonna take, and, you know, just to make it a collaborative process, because I understand trying to get it done by the end of the year, but, and when we need to do that, but I just wanna make sure that we're sensitive to if others have something going on, that they have an opportunity to tell us, and as I said, I didn't really see that time frame put out there such that, they'd have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, we can certainly reach out. A timeline has been in the presentations we've been giving. I guess I would say
Okay.
Diana is the only place. We haven't gotten a lot of feedback or pushback.
Okay.
But we have
Okay.
been working specifically with Urbandale and West Des Moines, talking to them about getting comments. And as communities pass the resolution, we've been reaching out and letting them know that there's an opportunity to meet in April, and we're hoping to get comments in May. So we can be
Yeah.
more purposeful about including the group in that conversation.
Yeah, and we do have a date for getting a resolution passed. Is that the end of this month?
That's right.
Mhm.
Now, I suspect we might have a couple of stragglers. We aren't meeting with Polk City's council until the 28th, so I don't know that they'll be in a position to take action that day, but most of the others, I think, will have the opportunity.
All right. Anything else on regional governance? All right, hearing none on that, we'll move to our first action item, which is item 3A, acceptance of the 2020 well rehabilitation McMullen Water Treatment Plant. I guess I'll have you explain this, Ted, and then I'll get a motion.
Sure, Graham. Each of the radial collector wells that we operate, both at the McMullen treatment plant and the Saylorville treatment plant, have a need to be cleaned, rehabilitated on a schedule. This is part of that normal schedule. Cleaning and rehabilitating one of the collector wells, or a number of the collector wells at the McMullen treatment plant. So there's some data here in the memo about which wells were cleaned, 2, 3, and 5, and the percentage of increase in the capacity that was obtained by that cleaning, and then also a comment about the installation of an additional lateral well screen in collector well number 5 to replace one that had been damaged by flooding. Quite a little bit of work there. All of the work is now done. The final contract price is actually a little less than the original bid because of quantities and the actual work as it was performed. And we're here asking the board to accept that project as completed by the contractor.
So I'm looking for a motion to accept the 2020 well rehabilitation McMullen Water Treatment Plant contract completed by BCI Water Resources Group Incorporated in the amount of $998,393.75. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second? And a second from Sue. Any comments or questions on item 3A? Hearing none, how would we do this now? We just say aye, we don't have to record the vote, do we?
All in favor, worked great last time. Diane chimed in, you got it.
There you go. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Hearing none, item 3A passes. So item 3B is to request authorization to reimburse the city of Des Moines for water main relocations for closest creek storm sewer improvements phase 3. Go ahead and explain this one to us, Ted, and I'll get a question.
Graham, this is a city project where they're doing a number of storm sewer improvements. They're doing a lot of storm sewer work, as you know, throughout the city to address flooding and other types of issues related to the existing storm sewer system. Oftentimes when they upgrade the system or increase the size of the pipe or just lay new pipe, our existing facilities end up in conflict with those facilities. So what we have here is a request for authorization to reimburse the city. They will include that work in their project based on designs that we completed. Their contractor will complete the work, and then we will reimburse them for the water main work, in addition to a percentage of their mobilization cost that's commensurate with percentage of the work represented by our water main alterations. So we're asking for permission, authorization to reimburse the city for work related to the closest creek storm sewer.
So the motion is to authorize staff to reimburse the city of Des Moines for water main relocations included in the closest creek storm sewer improvements phase 3 project. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Susan, moved it, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Joel, any comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Aye.
And those opposed, none, and so that passes. Item 3C, this is request authorization to reimburse Polk County for engineering design work on Northeast Broadway Avenue reconstruction project. And Ted's gonna explain this, and there's gonna be a slight change to the written motion.
That's right, man. This is actually a massive project. If you look at the map that's on the page behind the yellow, you can see that the county is looking at upgrading Broadway Avenue from Second Avenue all the way to Hubble, which is several miles. And within that several miles of work, it's about 10,000 feet of water main that's going to need to be replaced because of conflict with various phases of the construction, be it changes in grade or sewers or what have you. The county is on a very short timeline to have this design completed, so short in fact that we don't have the capacity to complete the work, and they don't have the capacity to get us the drawings we need to incorporate. So we're actually going to work with the county to have their designer incorporate all of the water main requirement, or the required water main work into their project. And then we are planning to reimburse them for those design costs. Now, important to note, the design cost here is about $114,000, not a huge amount of money, but we anticipate that we'll come back to the board later in the summer with a request to reimburse the county something on the order of $2 million for the actual water main construction that will happen in the next 2 to 3 years. So this is just simply to incorporate the design work into the county's project, to get it done on the schedule that they need to meet the federal deadlines for inclusion in a DOT leg project. And we will come back to the board again with the actual construction. Now, the difference that you mentioned, Graham, is that we had written this up as a reimbursement, how we often do this with the city and the county. The county, late last week, I think on Friday, in fact, sent us a 2080 agreement. They want to do it by 2080 agreement instead of just simply by motion to authorize the staff. So what we're asking, it's the same amount of money, it's the same concept, it's reimbursing them for engineering design services related to this Broadway Avenue project. But instead of simply authorizing staff to reimburse the county, we're requesting authorization to execute the 2080 agreement. As always with the 2080 agreement process, we evaluate whether there are any facilities available for use or sharing. Obviously, being this is our water main that we're replacing, there are no other facilities available for use or sharing. We're asking the board to authorize execution of the 2080 agreement, which will allow us to reimburse the county for this design.
So again, we're just looking for a motion to execute a 2080 agreement with Polk County for engineering design work on the Northeast Broadway Avenue reconstruction project. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments, questions?
I have a question. So they're doing their transportation infrastructure project, and we're taking advantage of the road being ripped up to be able to do a replacement.
Yeah, to some extent that's true. I think it might be fair to characterize it as they're gonna upgrade the transportation infrastructure, and those upgrades in some instances are in conflict with our facilities, and in some instances we're taking advantage of the fact that the road will be out. But there's a combination of those. Some of this pipe we may or may not have wanted to replace right now. Kyle could probably comment on that.
There's a small portion of pipe that we would like to replace, but the vast majority of the project is due to conflicts with storm sewers, sanitary sewers, road grade changes.
So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we're covering the cost of all of our portion of the project?
That's correct. We've been working closely with the designers in the county to minimize those disruptions, and so they have redesigned some of the storm sewers, but those utilities, or we are responsible, and historically we would be responsible for all those costs. And so, yes.
I mean, this just goes again to that, in my mind, goes again to that conversation we were having about the city or the county, in this case, accessing some significant grant dollars to do their project and kind of not only pushing our hand to do a project, but pushing our hand to do a project because of a conflict that their project is now creating and costing us millions of dollars to fix something.
I think that's a fair characterization. They have money and they're doing projects, projects result in conflicts. We are in their right of way by permission from them, so we're occupying their right of way. If we had been in an easement outside of their right of way, they would have had to pay.
Okay.
But frankly, it's so much easier for us and better typically for us to be in the public right of way, which is sort of where utilities are intended to be. We do have the benefit of the city and the county typically working with us to try to avoid conflicts with infrastructure that doesn't need to be replaced. In this case, I know that we've done quite a bit of that. We had some water main in this segment that was less than 10 years old. That originally, they were asking us to move, but we pushed back on that a little bit.
Okay.
Some of this though, you see when they pave this much street, they often change the grade 2 or 3 feet. If they lower the grade, we just can't leave the pipe there, it's too shallow, it frees the surfaces of all things. But I think you have a clear understanding. They have a lot of money right now, they're doing a lot of projects. We have received no federal funding to this point, and so we are ending up on both the city and the county side, replacing infrastructure that probably isn't our top priority. We do benefit to some extent, but that's kind of the way it works. We're in there right.
Sure.
Ted, 2 questions. Have we or will we have the opportunity to do some planning or update our planning, taking into consideration the fact that the entities in our area do have a lot more money right now for transportation? I'm trying to recall if we kind of built that into our recent budgeting or planning, and what opportunity, should we be thinking about that? And then second, if you could remind us about, what we're doing, if anything, or what we can do to access federal funds where infrastructure money is fading around. I recall some of that was tailored in a way that was not available to us.
Yeah, there are a couple of things. Good questions, Joel. First of all, over the last 5 years, we pretty significantly increased our budget for water main replacement. Not because we knew that others were going to have a lot of funds and they were going to be doing a lot of work, but because we had a study done that indicated we needed to increase the amount of spending on water main replacement. So we have more money. We have had in the last 2 or 3 years significantly more money to reinvest in the distribution system. As it turns out, a lot of that money is being spent replacing water mains on City of Des Moines or Polk County projects. Not necessarily a bad thing, it's just not the top priorities necessarily that we would have chosen. So we're keeping up. This project is probably going to be a 3-year project. We'll spread that $2 million out over 2 or 3 years. Not an incredible burden, but certainly a little bit of a challenge. So to the extent that we knew we needed to invest more money in our distribution system, we have adjusted the budget. We haven't gone beyond that to take into consideration all of the streets that the city might do. We don't really have a good handle on how much they're going to invest, which streets are they going to do, are there going to be conflicts. That's just really hard for us to diagnose in advance, and so we're a little bit more reactive in that way. We replace as much as we can with the funds we have available, and then when city projects come along, we defer to those projects in some cases. So that's kind of how that's working. On your other question about what are we doing to try to access federal funds, some of the challenge that we have had relates to the fact that we're not a city or a county and the funds have been distributed to cities and counties primarily. We're an independent municipal utility. We've recognized that as a challenge here in the last year. The board is aware that we have contracted with an EC lobbying firm to help us with a lot of things. PFAS, harmful algae blooms, federal funding, lead service line funding. all of those kind of things. And one of the things that they've been able to help us do here very recently, we're in fact right in the middle of a series of meetings with other water utilities across the country who are independent municipal utilities. And Jen will correct me if I get this wrong, but I think we've met with Birmingham, we've met with Pittsburgh, we're gonna meet with Water One, Johnson County, Kansas, Denver might be on the list. So there are a lot of pretty big utilities, and we're finding out amazing things from them. Things that they do to help ensure that they are eligible for funding or to try to access this funding. We're also finding out that we're not alone in this boat. A lot of these other independent municipal utilities don't have the kind of direct access to these federal funds that cities and counties have. In at least one case, the independent municipal utility was at the table with the city leadership deciding what projects were gonna be funded with their infrastructure dollars, and there were some water projects funded. And we haven't had that kind of a conversation here in Des Moines, but we're gonna meet with those folks, we're gonna learn what we can. I think Jennifer has suggested that maybe through AMWA, we might create a work group that meets on a regular basis, like annually, of independent municipal utilities to talk about the challenges we have and the solutions that have been discovered. So we're doing that. Jen, are there other things beyond that we're doing that you would like to share?
Yeah, I'll just consult my report.
Well, if you
I think
want
I
to
forced
give
us to
your
jump
report.
ahead.
Well, we gotta move on this. Go ahead and
No, I
talk
was
to this
just-
item on that.
I'm gonna pass the baton quickly over to Amy, because one of the reasons that we were not able to access the funding was because we were not on the intended use plan list for the SRF money, and that's how it was dispersed in a lot of instances. And so Amy and Mike are working on remedying that situation. The other thing is, to stress, like Ted, like a couple of the utilities have the kind of relationship with their cities where they were brought to the table to make the decisions. So I think that's something that we can definitely work on, is how, how those decisions are made and building that relationship. The work group through AMWA is really good. And then also we've been meeting with our congressional delegations a lot. And so we have about 4 pieces of work that we would like to talk about at the federal level, including the city of Des Moines is not always viewed as a disadvantaged community, but we serve neighborhoods that are disadvantaged. And so we want that written into policy, that although Des Moines might not, the citizens that we serve sometimes come from disadvantaged communities. Also, the fact that homeowners own the lead lines, so that's a really important niche that some of our colleagues that we're talking to have recognized. So we're working with our congressional delegation on lead service lines as well. And then PFAS. So there's these really great niches at the federal level that have come through the infrastructure bill, as well as just some operational things. But do you want to talk about the SRF, just a quick update? That would be great.
Yeah, happy to. Des Moines Waterworks is a little bit at a disadvantage, frankly, in terms of all of this federal funding, or most of it going through the SRF program, because in the past, we have not used the SRF program. We have issued revenue bonds. And so we are playing a bit of a catch-up, now that there's so much on the line, frankly, to get on the state's intended use plan. The challenging piece of that is that your projects have to be shovel-ready. And so engineering is working very hard to analyze the different options on some of our more significant projects, such as our treatment expansion and so forth. So Mike and I and our teams are meeting regularly to make sure that we keep moving forward and that we can become placed on that intended use plan as quickly as possible to access some of the funds. It is important to note, I think, that a lot of the federal fund is, it's just more SRF money, and I don't mean to intend that that's not appreciated, but they're not all forgivable loans, they're not all grants. As Jen just said, much of that money is for disadvantaged communities, so that is another challenge. So we're really just trying to navigate all of the money as it is released.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. And then the last thing I forgot was intriguing. I think Ted mentioned we met with the CEO of Birmingham Water 2 days ago, and they have also recognized the same difficulties, and they've actually hired a grant writer. And so I've noticed, like, everybody's knee deep in doing their regular work here at the utility, and it's just hard to make your way through all of the acronyms and links and things. And Amy's good about doing all that, but they've secured a grant writer. And so Woodbury was telling us that other utilities have done that as well. So you engage with someone who knows where the grants are, how to write them, and
I think that that AMWA group, as it comes together, you have that working group, that sharing of information is gonna be vital. And I think there's so much opportunity to share other things. I mean, why wouldn't we share the same grant writers, on some projects and other things? And so I think that will pay a great dividend to us going forward, and let alone how that works with our federal team.
Yeah, at AMWA, it's the Association Metropolitan Water Agencies. They're the top 100 largest utilities in the nation, and we have so much to learn from them and they from us. But the way that we got started was AMWA did an inquiry among their members of who was independently managed utilities, and that's how we found these folks. And so now we're engaging with them, and I agree with you. I was just telling Ted, the people that we've met with are interested in meeting with us as a small group 2 or 3 times a year just to kick around, some of the issues that we're talking about today.
Well, and so we can go back to the city of Des Moines and tell them that, these 16, 17 other communities, they work this way with their cities and do things. I think we can make a change in our relationship with Des Moines. They'll understand that it can be done a different way.
Yeah, I think that's true.
So I think that's excellent work.
But
So,
back to Andrea's point, are we talking to Polk County, with their $90 million that they have, are we asking them to help offset this cost, which is something that they're doing?
We have not asked them about this, and part of the reason I would say is that this is a longstanding practice. They do a street, we replace the water main. We have talked to them about some water quality initiatives and some other things that we want them to spend that money on. And so not to say that we can't go to them and say, hey, even though we've been doing this way for a long time, maybe you can consider using some of those funds. If you're gonna do Broadway with your infrastructure funds, you should include the water.
Right.
Yeah. We've had those kind of conversations with the city without a lot of success, but I don't know that we've had that conversation with the county.
I did bring it up with the county, the person who's been contacting me, and it was clear to me that they were only interested in talking about water quality improvement projects.
Who's the person?
It's been a couple of different people. There's John Norris and John Swanson are convening a water quality work group next week. They've invited a bunch of people to talk about possible joint partnerships for source water quality.
I've always found the county very generous and understanding about community projects for the betterment of everyone, and this is something, I think it would just be worth, making a presentation, even at a board meeting, or to have a meeting with Supervisor Conley.
I think that's a good point. I think it's an excellent point. I really do. Yeah. Okay, so we talked about a lot there, but we're still on item 3C. We have a motion and a second on this item. Are there any other questions or comments on item 3C? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 And those opposed? Hearing none, that item passes, and those are our 3 action items. We'll move into information items. Committee reports, planning committee.
Yes, so we met and got an update on the Saylorville water treatment plant expansion. I'm not sure if others remember when we were kind of going over that long-range plan. To me, there was definitely a sense of urgency that we needed to move on some of the items identified there, the Saylorville water treatment plant being one of them. So we got an update from our engineering partners and looked at 10 MGD expansion as well as a 25, and how to move forward with both of those, taking advantage of some of the legwork, permits, and infrastructure already in place to be as efficient as possible. I believe we're still finishing up those engineering reports and decisions, but with that sense of urgency that we need to continue to move forward. I think the other thing that was noted was that the next step would, and correct me if I'm wrong, is also to take this to our regional partners and share with them the need to expand not only this core piece of our network, but also to make way for future growth. And I don't know if you guys want to elaborate on that at all.
Yeah, I would just agree with what you said, Andrea, that the next step is to get the presentation and probably actually in more detail out to the regional partners so they understand what the team and the consultant is recommending as a first step and what the options are for the next steps.
Diane or Joel, you guys were also at meeting, anything to add?
Nothing for me.
All right. So the Finance and Audit Committee, Joel.
Yes, the Finance and Audit Committee received a report from Amy Kaler on our water rates. It's included in your packet, and I thought it was very interesting. Of particular interest to me, I suppose, was the, perhaps, I wouldn't say confusing nature, but the nature of our water bills that, some people struggle to understand. They see their bills going up and they think it's because of us, when in fact there's solid waste and wastewater and other charges on there that are often contributing to the increases as well. So we had a good discussion about what, if anything, we can do to remedy that and maybe shed some light on the different aspects of water bills. We also discussed affordability, and I believe some next steps included further evaluation of the affordability of our water rates on our customers.
Actions. Anything else on Finance and Audit?
I think that was it.
That's the whole thing. All right. I expect on the Bill Stow work, and I've mentioned some of this, and it's a bit of a repeat, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. You know, since we talked about this, in some ways the pandemic did a certain favor with the Stow effort. It made us pull back a little bit and think about what the mission of this effort would be. And we're really kind of focusing on it being a convener of ideas, if you will, of helping promote different things. So if you think about like the Citizens Water Academy, the job would be, or what we see that the Stow effort's job to be, would be to help think about how you expand the Citizens Water Academy. Can you take that to students? Can you take it statewide? Can you, and explore those things? So I say that, and we'll come back in further on that. Starting this summer, and this is what I might have mentioned with you, we're going to work with the Lakeside Labs up in Okoboji to fund, and the Stow Foundation will fund a couple of internships to begin to study things like that. How do we expand the Citizens Water Academy? Look at if there was a physical presence at Wireworks Park, what would that education component look like? What other possible partners would make sense? The Science Center, school districts, and that sort of thing. So this summer's kind of a beginner step, if you will, with a couple of interns that we expect to do a multi-year project with, which I get really excited about. And so I think what we'll do, what we plan on, we won't be ready to come to this board in April, but probably in May or June, I'll ask for an agenda item where we can just provide an update to the board on kind of what's in progress and what we're thinking on the Stow effort. And I think I'll have a better idea about some timing of things. But as I say, I think this concept that the Stow work supports other things that are going on and coordinates with Waterworks, Des Moines Waterworks. Des Moines Waterworks looks at partnering with other people to do things in the park or educational efforts, so that we're not duplicating, but this is actually the multiplier, if you will. So I'm excited about that. And so look for something May or June on our agenda to get a full update on that. The Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden, remind me, the date we're hoping is a planning meeting in May.
That's right.
To do, we'll hold maybe over at the garden. And so that we can, board and staff can step foot in the garden and take a look at the plaque and take a tour of what's going on over there. That would be a great thing, and I just need to confirm that. That's a plan. Right about that same week, May 5th, if you're available on your schedule, is the kind of a spring fundraiser for the Botanical Garden. It's a fun event where you can purchase plants to support the garden. So you get wine, you get plants, it's a perfect combination on a beautiful evening. Although a couple years ago it was freezing. But if it's a nice evening, it's a great event. So May 5th, if you're interested in that at the garden, but we'll also have the planning meeting about that time.
And that's the third, the one on the third, and
What's that?
the one on the third.
Yes, the one, the planning meeting on the 3rd.
And we've made that request, we haven't gotten that completed.
I'll
Not
work
yet,
that, but
So,
yeah, that should work out. And that's what I've got on those two. And then Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation Board. Andrea, Joel,
Yeah, I think
Mike.
the most relevant information is there in your packet. We're still a little bit over $1 million shy from meeting that goal for phase 1, but continuing to chip away at that and find some alternative solutions. An exciting piece to note is the water filling stations that are going up. That are being funded by Delta Dental, but I think it's a great opportunity to continue to tell the story about Des Moines Waterworks utility and have that opportunity to be out there in the park as well. And then coming up on Earth Day is the, I'm gonna say 5th annual, not sure what the
It sounds about right.
5th annual extraordinary egg hunt. Where they will be hiding eggs throughout the park, encouraging folks to pick up trash, and receiving glass eggs in return for finding a plastic egg in the park. This year, normally there's glass eggs hidden all over the park in effort to minimize the hunters they get out early. They're putting in plastic eggs. The added benefit is that those plastic eggs are gonna be filled with fun water quality facts. To kind of continue the education opportunity there. And then they can be exchanged for a glass egg. There will also be other educational pieces put up throughout the park in a way to kind of celebrate Earth Day.
Mike and Joel, anything else to add for the foundation?
I'll add that, the sound from the amphitheater continues to be an issue, and I understand that, I guess I don't know who's doing it, but someone's putting monitors in the neighborhoods nearby, so the city can have more data on the sound. I don't know who's responsible for the monitors, but that's ongoing.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I think Ted and I might be able to add a little bit to that. We've had, as part of meetings with the city manager and the mayor, sound has come up, so has the tunnel and the outstanding debt on that. We're hopefully working through some of the sound issues, and monitoring is a key point, right? I think that it's important that we're all working on the same data. I don't know a lot about sound, but I mean, you can have a half-second spike in sound, a scream, somebody drops something. What you really want to is you want to monitor sound by minute, so you average sound per minute. And obviously, if you're violating the sound ordinance, repeatedly during a concert, that's a problem. So the first thing is to monitor, but also to work with the communities and get some, so people have a number to call and we can check on that. That's important that we're working on. And so this summer we'll work on that and make sure that we'll work on the same data, but also if there are violations that we know when they are and we take care of them immediately and take steps to stop them in the future. And I'm hopeful, the city hasn't offered anything yet, but we're working on creative ways to eliminate that debt. Hopefully there could be some sort of payment over time. So if you take $1 million and divide it over 20 years and the foundation can pay over $50,000 a year, it becomes a much more manageable event. The other thing that may come across your radar screens, and I don't know if the foundation has talked about it much, because it's not really this isn't an effort of the foundation, it's an effort of other people in the community. There's interest in replacing the footbridge over the river. And, bikers and others, and the city have a real interest in replacing that bridge, which Des Moines Waterworks owns. And that will be a costly project, if you think about that. But Andrea and I talked at lunch the other day about this. I think that if there is an interest among the city and members of the community in replacing that bridge, that we create some sort of ad hoc committee of the foundation, that that group then can go out and raise money and focus on replacing that bridge, and hopefully there'll be some city funds involved in that, maybe some infrastructure funds. But we learned the lesson from the tunnel, and that is that we raise the money, and then we replace the bridge. But that could be, Ted, what, a $5 million project?
I think so, yeah, 3 to 5.
So it's a whole lot of money, but it's one we don't, as I say, it's not necessarily on the foundation's radar screen, it's not on the Des Moines Waterworks radar screen, but it's on others, and so we will be the convener of that idea and bring people together. So if you hear about that, know that it's out there, but nothing's happening yet. Is that a fair way to summarize that?
I think you're right on this.
All right, so that's the information items, and we're gonna throw it back to Jennifer Terry to continue her report, which she has started.
Yeah, I had such a long list, but it's dwindling, because we've talked about. Circling back to the bike bridge, if you are interested in talking with me, I think there's some state infrastructure money that you might be wanting to think about as we talk about possible bridge funding. So I'll start with the state legislative update. So the second legislative final passed last Friday, and in a nutshell, in general, if it's other than appropriations or budget, it won't be taken up this session. And so there was a sticky bill, HF 2473, the tenant delinquency bill, which removed some backstops for us for getting collections done and things, and it keeps coming up session after session. It did again this time, and our lobby team advocacy strategies was really good at working with a couple of other organizations, and then we had a couple of staff people that were really instrumental in turning the tide on that. It did not make it through the funnel. Amy Kaler did an excellent job with legislators, and Laura Sarcone actually went to the Capitol and she spoke at a hearing. I think it was a Senate hearing, and so those two did a really great job at that. So I'm very fortunate to have lots of subject matter experts to call on. So
Do you have any idea whether this beast has been killed, or is this something that's going to come back again? I mean, you never know, but. So I mean, that's something that we've got to be ahead of next session probably.
we were ahead of it in this session too, but you know what? It was like convoluting, and an amendment will be stuck on, and it goes to the House, and more amendments are stuck on, and we get up in the morning, there's 3 more emails from the lobby team, so.
It is Frankenstein that keeps coming back.
Is there a fear that it will, speaking of amendments, sneak its way back onto a standings amendment? Is it that?
Christmas tree bill?
Is
I don't
it that
think this
passionate?
one can,
Okay.
but Sue, you've been up there a lot more than I don't think.
Anything.
Anything can happen, that's true. I shouldn't say that, but I think this one might be done for the season, but again, it's probably not for sure. The other thing is, in terms of Central Iowa Waterworks, so we decided because of COVID constraints, we did not do our legislative breakfast, and so we chose to spend the budget that we had on that on purchasing delightful Des Moines Waterworks water bottles, the really nice blue ones. And we got 150 of those, and we stuffed them with my business card and an invitation to come to Zoom meetings this Thursday to talk about Central Iowa Waterworks. And so 150 legislators got our water bottles with invitations and then a follow-up email. And so Ted and Amy are going to do 2 Zoom presentations this Thursday. So all legislators were invited, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, to tell our story and answer questions. That's it for the state. Federal legislative update, I've got Woodbury. I am very pleased with the work that they're doing for us, especially now. Things are so important. As far as in memory, federal issues are so important to drinking water right now that I think they're doing a really great job of navigating this space for us. I always want to set expectations. Federal law and policy move at a glacial pace. So if I talk about wins, they're incremental, wins, I guess. But a couple of those, we're working really hard to figure out how to deal with harmful algal bloom issues in the Des Moines River. And so by the end of the year, we are hoping to add the Upper Mississippi River Basin to a piece of legislation that would increase research and mitigation of HABs in Iowa reservoirs that are under the jurisdiction of the Corps of Engineers. So that would be a really big win, and that's something that we're working really hard with our congressional delegation on. We're watching the bipartisan infrastructure law unfold, all the things that we talked about. Lead line replacement, Jenny Puffer, Director of Distribution, did a great tutorial for both our state and federal government relations teams, because it's hard for them in DC to understand how it's going to be actually put into motion out here in ground, so they were really thankful for that. We're trying to be a bit proactive in terms of mapping. We think we know where about 20,000 lead service lines are. We are working with the University of Iowa research team to do some overlaying of mapping. So if we think we know where they are, they're using the 2020 census information to try and understand which of those neighborhoods would be disadvantaged communities. So if federal money comes available, we can try and through impact or another organization start following there. So that's our, hopefully a way of being proactive on lead. PFAS, interestingly, we worked with, this was largely due to some work by Senator Ernst. She helped in the National Defense Authorization Act that was passed. She has Iowa Air National Guard sites included as sites that are priority areas for reporting on PFAS. And so Iowa was listed by name with some of the other areas in there. So a huge thank you to our congressional delegations that are working with us really hard on those federal issues. The last thing that I've been working on the Greater Des Moines Partnership Federal Policy Committee all the time that I've been here, last time and this time. We've always tried to get, especially in the last year, I wanted to get regional drinking water as its own section in the federal policy document, and there's been, for some reason, it's never been listed separately. We've got broadband, we've got surface transportation, we've got all kinds of different sections, but we've never had drinking water, which is seems to be like a glaring gap. So I was talking with some of the leadership there, and they have decided to add regional drinking water as its own section. So that's pretty exciting. I just submitted some of our federal issues today, so that's pretty cool. We already talked about the AMWA situation and how I think that's going to be great. We've pretty much covered that. I will just add, under the heading of community outreach, there's tons of exciting stuff going on. I'll just touch on a little bit, but have been approached, I'm not going to talk a lot about it today, but we were approached by an agricultural retailer about possibly setting aside some little demonstration plots in our park to demonstrate conservation practices and wise use of farming practices and conservation methods. And so our technical team, Kyle and Jessica Barnett and Ted, and then in terms of an agreement, the Dickinson team, and then the other side of the team that approached us. We've been having lots of talks about the likelihood of that happening. If we could get this pulled together, they would be bringing all kinds of agricultural interests through the park to look at these plots. And then they would be invited if they wanted to come on tours or learn more about drinking water and watersheds. So those interests are very excited, and we're very excited if we can make it happen. So that's in the works.
Jen, are those, this is the same as the item that was discussed at the Park Foundation Board, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Make sure we didn't have two different,
No, that's
the
it.
same, okay.
Yep, that's the same. Melissa and I met with the Des Moines International Airport today, so keep on the lookout for that one. We could have some really exciting complimentary space to educate people about drinking water. Des Moines Waterworks out there, it's a couple of the public areas, so that's pretty exciting. Ted suggested having his photo out there, so I said, maybe, that would be good. We had national media attention in the Sierra Club national newsletter, which goes to thousands and thousands of people about our source water quality issues. We were interviewed, Ted was with, along with some others, and that's told our story in a good way, I think. Citizen Water Academy is normally held in October. This year it's going to be held in May. We bumped it up because of COVID. We had, in alignment with our strategic plan and the way we do things, we looked at our core values. We changed it the way that we recruit, who we reach out to apply for the Citizen Water Academy, those sorts of things. And we had a wonderful range of diverse applicants, and I believe we have 20 that have said that they can join us, and that's thrilling. So that's really cool. Again, in alignment with our strategic plan and our core values, we changed our sponsorship plan into what we're calling a Clean Water Support Program. And so we're looking to build relationships and raise up new voices in the water space. And so again, we recruited in a different way. We are calling on people and they have applied. And so I don't remember how many applications we had. We had a good number and they were great. So we have notified 5 organizations that we will be helping to support their work this year. We can cover those on another day, but they're great. They're new and different. They're really fun. And one of those is almost to do like a little mini water academy with, I think it's called the Genesis Foundation, and it's, they work with refugees from Western Africa, and so it would be helping the students and their parents understand more about drinking water and how to engage in the water cycle and all those sorts of things. So that's an example, it's pretty cool. And then taking our message to new audiences, our Iowa Nutrient Collaborative, which we launched last year, is a group of public water supplies who struggle with nitrate across the state. We are presenting to 100 and some people, I think, next week for the American Society of Farm Managers. And so that's pretty interesting, because they manage a lot of the farm ground that's in our watershed. So we're going to understand from them what they want to know from us, and maybe we can speak to some more of their groups, so that'll be fun. And then, not sure if you knew it, but the Nutrient Collaborative, we had in our budget to support the collaborative this year. One of the ways we're doing that is to secure the services of a coordinator to help coordinate the efforts, because it's been a struggle for me to keep everything going. So Melissa Walker is taking on the role of coordinating the Nutrient Collaborative for this year. All the while, we're looking for a grant for next year to get that, hopefully from the EPA or NRC. So that's a lot to throw at you, but that's all I have on my list today.
One more thing,
Yes.
could you comment on the visit we're expecting from EPA and their interest in our programs?
Yes, and so we got an invitation from the Environmental Protection Agency Region 7. They called last week to say that there's a gentleman coming from DC who is the Senior Agriculture Advisor to Director Michael Regan at the EPA. And he's going to be in Des Moines this Friday. And so they wanted to know if they could drive by and talk with us about our river water quality and about the collaborations that we're doing, such as the cover crop seeder and so on. So he's the policy advisor to Michael Regan, so that's pretty cool. So we're gonna have lunch with them this Friday, tell our story, see if we can get some federal support for some of the things that we're doing. Yes.
Jen, you're downplaying the whole piece about water being added to the partnership agenda, because I've been in those meetings with you when you're texting me like, what do I need to do for my voice to be heard? So congratulations to you. You know, you're going on the partnership trip. No.
I
Yes?
blew my travel budget on another trip I'm doing because I have to speak, but no.
Okay,
But our delegation will know that we're coming, and then our Woodbury team's gonna be hooking up if possible with those folks.
okay. The reason I'm bringing that up is it seems like it could be an ideal year for us to be one of the featured priorities with everything going on around water. And the way the trip is structured, and those that have been on it, Thursday afternoon, while everybody goes out on side trips, we have a chance to really have some up-close time with key staff people. It's not our elected officials, but it's the staffers that really do the work. And they usually select, the partnership selects about 5 areas. And, you know, culture is always one, or quality of life. But certainly water, with what we have going on with regionalization, I think we need to educate those folks, you know, what we're doing on the regionalization effort. But also this whole PFAS thing, since Senator Ernst has taken such a lead on it, you know, talking about water quality, PFAS, and then regionalization would be just, they're usually a 30-minute presentation. It would be, I think, an ideal year to ask Jay Byers if we couldn't be one of those 5 presentations.
When is the trip?
8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere right in here, May.
May? Well, let's talk about that. I think we should try to have a presence there,
I will be there for sure.
and maybe I should try to go.
You've been there before. I think it'd be a great year to go.
Let's talk about that, and maybe we should talk to Jen too. Maybe we can find some money in the travel budget.
It would really only be worth it.
Look at Amy.
I think it'd only be worth it if we could be one of the featured priorities for Thursday afternoon. Otherwise,
Well, if we're talking about regionalization and PFAS, I mean, West Des Moines, isn't West Des Moines also having some PFAS issues right now?
and they're gonna be
There, so it seems like there's an opportunity to take advantage of one of our new budding partnerships.
Mayor
Trent is
Trimble
every
will be
bit as
there.
involved as I am too, like, if
Yeah.
it works out that you could go to, like, he tells our story better than anyone, so.
Let's have a call, maybe tomorrow, to talk about this and figure out whether this is worth doing and how we can make it happen.
I think the important thing is right now, the agenda's being finalized, and then from that agenda, the, you know, featured priorities will be selected. we're a pretty significant stakeholder with the partnership. And as you'll remember, a few years ago, we had Jay come and we talked about, here's what you could do to help us. I think this would be a key year.
Well, and I think that the timing with regionalization, I think it's not, it's top of mind for a lot of reasons.
It is.
And so we should capitalize on that.
Well, it's spinning off of that, you have a wide variety of a lot of amazing things going on. And is there anything else that this board could be doing to assist you and the rest of the staff in some of these policy and partnership efforts to ensure that they keep moving in the direction that we want them to? We certainly
If
don't
that's a
sit-
thought.
yeah.
I don't know
That's a
if
great
that's-
question.
Yeah.
Right away, I think that to highlight what Brandon Sewer's saying, either building my points, had said, if we can come up with a strategy of strengthening our ties with the county and with the city on some of the infrastructure funding, just long-term relationship building, what does that look like, you know? I think that would be super helpful. Thank you, Andrea.
Jennifer, thank you.
I'll send you the sheet that I'm sending to the partnership, or just a single sheet. Thank you.
Ted, it's time for your show.
Yeah, that's a tough act to follow right there, I have to say. Just a couple of things from me. First, we already talked about regionalization, regional governance. I think we've had enough touch on that. But I do want to talk about briefly the strategic plan. And as we approach the end of the first quarter, the board can expect an update on the strategic initiatives for this year. Remember, it's a 5-year plan. We have 8 strategic initiatives for this year. And we'll be providing an update in the board packet on those next year. I think most of those have launched already here in the first quarter. And so there should be some status updates on most of those. A couple that I want to highlight today, though, include our customer outreach, Voice of the Customer Survey. We haven't done a Voice of the Customer Survey for a number of years. We're going to do that. We have the team, led, I think, by Laura Sarcone, has issued an RFP and got proposals back and has selected SM Research to do the survey. They will be doing some focus groups and some phone surveying. That will happen over summer, but that's just getting started right now. That would be great information to have. The second thing I would highlight is our diversity and inclusion initiative. And that's something that we're going to take a totally different approach this year on how we address diversity and inclusion. We are going to hire a consultant to help us develop a plan in the first year. That's our initiative for this year, is to develop a plan. The first step there was to issue an RFP, which has been issued. We're going to get proposals back from a number of consultants, and then we're going to try to get a team here at the Waterworks, including some employees. We've reached out to employees and offered them the opportunity to be part of the selection process and be part of this process kind of throughout. Bill Blubaugh, our union president, has volunteered graciously to be a member of that selection team. We have at least one other employee who's not part of the management team. I think that's really important to have more of a cross-section of the utility participate in that process right from the very beginning throughout the year to the end and try to come up with a plan. We've learned already that we have to start with the workplace and sort of our brand before we can work on our workforce and be successful there. So that's been a hurdle for us for a long time. So exciting things happening there too with a number of the initiatives related to the strategic plan. We'll have a little bit more of an update on that next month. Lastly, I would just share a couple of operational thoughts. We have so many projects, so many winter projects underway that we're starting to finish up, and we need to finish up before springtime demand and high summer demand. We got the wells rehabs done. McMullen, the board accepted that today. We have another well rehabilitation ongoing at Sailorville that we have to get done. That's well underway. The floor has been poured back in the nitrate removal facility. I think all who were involved with that will say that was a project somewhere where none of us want to go. It was a tough project. It took a lot longer than expected. But the floor is back. There's still work to be done. We have to get that facility up and ready for nitrates as the spring rains come. And the rains are welcome. The first drought monitor that was issued for the year showed abnormally dry for most of the watershed. We're hoping these rains this week will bring us a little closer to normal, and frankly, I'm hoping we get plenty of rain this spring. The rivers are low, much like they were last year at this time. We struggled last year with low river levels and high demand. I prefer not to have a repeat performance there, but we'll see.
We're seeing nitrate concentrations.
Nitrates are behaving so far. We saw a pretty good spike. Kyle, it didn't get above 10 up in the watershed, did it?
About 6.5, a lot of it coming from the South Raccoon River, because we didn't see a lot of rain in the North Raccoon River yet. So now that the rain is coming, now we're expecting to see more.
So it was very low, 2 or 3, and it spiked up to 6.5, and then came back down, starting to come down. If it rains up north, we'll see more. And so we're keeping an eye.
I think it'd be interesting as we go into the spring and summer with those new signs that have been posted, the drinking water sources, to see people's reactions as they watch the river levels and think about nitrates in our drinking water.
I hope we get more and more of those signs. We've had more interest from other jurisdictions. You know, Des Moines, the city of Des Moines was very cooperative. Polk County has reached out to us. We may be reaching out to the state on some of the state highways. Make it known.
I'm still hearing about it from my friends in Orbit, that they really like those.
Jennifer wants a travel budget, now she needs a bigger sign budget.
The signs are pretty cheap.
Cheaper than travel.
Yeah.
And I think that's it, Graham. I'll stop there.
That's great. I think that's everything we have, unless anybody has something to add today. You'll see on your agenda the committee meetings and the future board meetings. As we've discussed before, we plan to meet in person for board meetings. There's always a Zoom option for when Diane goes to Florida. And, but the committee meetings we'll probably continue to do primarily via Zoom, just because it's convenient.
Yes. With public access available here.
Yeah, absolutely. Public access will always be in this room, whether we're here or not. So, that's right, Michelle, that's you. Not hearing anything else, I think we will adjourn. Thank you.